Welcome back. Welcome to part 3 of Ignite the Healer Within. Today we enter the path of the healer. This is my favorite part, right? The path of the healer, igniting the healer within, which honestly has already or always been with you. With a deeper sense of awareness around how and why we become ill, we are free to release fear and settle into trust and acceptance. It's when we're courageous enough to surrender and become sovereign that we access our true nature and embody healing. Remember, healing occurs in the unconditional state of I am. Thus, being led back to this place is the path of the healer. And this is your birthright. You were born with this. You were born with the ability to exist just because you were. You were born. To release conditions and return to the I am, we must first understand the connection between body and mind. This is what we did in part 1. We learned about the biological adaptations that occur constantly in the background as a result of our perceptions. So we are always taking in the world around us. In terms of survival, our biological need is to survive and to procreate. And so, as young humans, just to recap, we can usually not fend for ourselves. We can't put shelter over our heads. We can't find food, feed ourselves. And so, survival is much bigger than just not getting killed in a way. Survival is being accepted. Survival is making sure that these people are going to feed you and they're going to put shelter over your head and they're going to provide what you need in order to survive. So, if you learned at a young age that you were not good enough, and this might be a belief based on, again, that desire or the need to have food in front of you and to have shelter over your head. If I'm not good enough, they might not accept me as one of their own, and I might be left out here to fend for myself, i.e., I will not survive. This belief of not being good enough, it might become built into your psyche and embedded in how you see the world. So although it felt that you felt that it served, or you believed you needed this in order to survive as a young child, typically it doesn't leave. We're not just leaving it there and continuing with our life. We're carrying this belief with us through the rest of our life. And it impacts the way that we see the world, that we interact with relationships, with ourselves. Again, it takes us away from the unconditional I am, because now instead of just existing, I can only exist if I am good enough. So everything I do, I will be trying to hit that bar of being good enough. This is a quote from the book Standardized Naturopathy by Dr. Paul Wendell. It was written, I think, in 1951. So, on naturopathic philosophy, it is based upon the conception which realizes that disease is something which arises in the system solely as a result of the body's attempt to rid itself of obstacles to its proper functioning. These obstacles originating in the first place from factors at work within the body of the individual concerned, and not from factors outside, as medical science would have us believe. So this just brings it home, a little summary of everything we're talking about. When we are talking about dis-ease in the body, it started in the body, right? Even if it was as a result of something external, this is an adaptation of the body. And so healing must occur at that same level versus the disservice of believing that medical science knows more than our individual experience, our individual bodies. Symptoms are the healing. So remember, when we learned about German new medicine and this new science, when we understand how our perceptions create biological adaptations in the body, symptoms do not occur until we're in a healing state. And remember, all healing occurs in a fluid state, which is, we can think of edema and inflammation. But inflammation is a buzzword. We are taught to take anti-inflammatories to suppress that. We are taught that inflammation is essentially the devil, right? But inflammation is the healing. My question is, could it be that the body is expressing what we are not capable of tuning into in the mind or the psyche? Because if it stayed in the mind or psyche and we were to learn our lessons and to understand where we veered from our true essence, where we've placed conditions, then maybe we wouldn't have to express symptoms in the body. You hear what I'm saying? Perhaps symptoms are a great gift because we are not so attuned to the beliefs or the patterns that may not actually be true. So perceptions are not always what we think. Well, perceptions are what we think, but not capital T truth. So acute symptoms, they clear up after the healing response is over. Yet chronic symptoms are an expression that the conflict continues to play out in the background. It's important to remember because acute symptoms, we get the conflict or the perception. We have symptoms that follow in a healing state, and then we recover. It's more complex than that, but that's oversimplified. In chronic states, we have the acute, and then we have the symptoms, but as the symptoms appear, there are other conflicts at play that keep this loop or track going. And as long as the conflicts continue to play out, then we will continue to have symptoms. A great example of this is if you get sick, and once you're sick and have symptoms, the body's healing, yet another perception or conflict plays in that is usually revolving around fear. I fear for my life because I'm sick. Well, that's a whole new conflict, a whole new perception, and a whole new biological adaptation is going to play out in the background. So we can create these loops that keep us in a chronic state of inflammation or of dis-ease. And although uncomfortable, symptoms and disease are an invitation to bravely assess and to find out where we have veered away from our path of truth. Again, what if we could see these symptoms, conditions, dis-ease as gifts? The path of truth, it's one without conditions. So remember, it's when we create conditions that we veer away from this path of truth, and into one of suffering. In his book, Holistic Counseling, which I would highly recommend if you're interested in what we're talking about in this work, Dr. Moshe states, the path of truth is our true calling, the fulfillment of our purpose. I love this, right? So remember, that is our birthright. It's what we're born with, the ability to exist simply because I am. This is capital T truth. There are no conditions. This is just my true calling, what I came here to do, before I created beliefs of what I needed in order to survive. On this path, we must face our fears, the fears that stand in the way of being ourselves. This is really rich, really important, because we might think, well, the path of truth sounds great. Why wouldn't we want to be on the path of truth? But we must understand that the path of truth is one of bravery. There's the aspect that if we want to be on the path of truth, then we must face our fears and our wounds, which is often uncomfortable. And remember, in conventional medicine, our medical system today even teaches us to fear disease, to suppress symptoms. So to dive face in, to face our fears, it's quite uncomfortable. We face many obstacles on this path. So the desire to not experience something, like that fear, like the wound, the uncomfort or discomfort, it can be so strong that we actually choose this second path. It might seem like what we truly want, again, because we're not facing those fears, or given we're running from our wounds, but this path is based on illusion. So it doesn't go anywhere, right? Because we're moving further from that path of truth, the true essence of who we are and what we came here to do. We create compensations. So these are behaviors or ways of thinking or acting in order to counterbalance the fear. So some obvious ones would be sex, alcohol, drugs, you name it. We could think of many. But maybe not so obvious would be some otherwise healthy tools such as yoga or meditation. These could be behaviors that we use to counterbalance the fear. And don't get me wrong, they can be very healthy, beneficial tools. But if we're using them to avoid the wounding, to counterbalance the fear, it's important to step back and recognize that they might be compensations at that point in time. Again, it is the path of nothingness, the second path. So my question to you is, which path do you believe you're on? If you were to take a moment and think about the patterns or behaviors that you've identified in yourself thus far. So remember that 3-part exercise where we maybe took note of some patterns or behaviors that we're not serving. So if you think about those in the way that you are moving through life at this very moment, would you say that you're on the path of truth, or are you perhaps running from fear? On that path of illusion, which can be really cloudy, it can be really uncertain, because why would we choose running, right? Why would we choose that second path? But now that you have a little more context, can you assess where you might be? And if that's clear, which path would you like to be on? If you chose the path of truth, that's a beautiful choice. You can give yourself a hug, pat on the back. That is a choice. You make that choice and you will constantly be led back there. You will create a lot of awareness around what led you to this second path and be led back to the path of truth. This is an invitation back to self. Again, what if dis-ease, conditions, symptoms, what if they were an invitation to return to your true self? What if without these little messages or big messages, we never knew to look inward? So again, can we start to see maybe just a little bit that dis-ease, that discontent, that symptoms, conditions? Perhaps there's a gift in them. Perhaps we can see that they are here to teach us. They are here for us to gain a deeper understanding, a deeper connection to this life, and to be led back to this path of truth, to the true self. Natural forces within us are the true healers of disease. I love this quote. And this is everything that we are talking about in this 3-day course, that what we have within us is truly what we need to heal. When we start to see that certain behaviors and actions might actually stem from our fear of fear, we see that they are not based in who we are and what we really want. So remember, this is part of the illusion. When we run from fear, it might feel comfortable, familiar, because this is what we've done our entire life. But it's really important to step back and assess, to see, are we actually running from the fear of our own fear? This is where we can see who we are and what we really want. So let's pause for a moment. If you have a journal, take that out right now. You can also take a screenshot as always, but we'll take about 2 minutes here. That's not a lot of time. So pause the recording if you're in a good headspace, if you'd like a little bit more time now, or write down the prompt so that you can revisit it later. My question for you today is, what would it look like to truly and honestly be on your path of truth and authenticity? The unapologetic, unfiltered, the true essence of who you are. And not just what would it look like, but you can add in there, what would it feel like? What would it be like? What would my relationships be like? What in my life would be different? Really get down to every tiny detail that you can. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes right now. Again, stop the recording if you'd like longer, and or revisit the prompt later. So what would it be like to truly and honestly be on your path of truth and authenticity? Okay, so we'll come back together. Again, feel free to take your time here. And this is also a great exercise to start any and every day with. So you can write as if it has already happened. You could write as if it's about to happen, however you want to do it. But in any given day, you wake up, do a little unfiltered journaling where you let words just flow through, hand on paper or typing or speaking, however you'd like to do it. What's it going to look like today for you to truly and honestly step forward and be on your path of truth? What is it going to look like to be totally authentic, to express yourself as the true authentic or true essence, rather, of who you are and what you came here to do? So embody your true authenticity. This is when we release these conditions, or it is when we release these conditions, and we show up simply as I am, that we embrace and embody our true authenticity. The body will always adapt, always. It'll always try and find homeostasis or balance based on our perceptions. So as long as we have a brain, as long as we are perceiving our surroundings, biological adaptations are happening in the background 24/7. Sometimes we feel or experience symptoms, and sometimes they're just happening, and it resolves before we even manifest symptoms in the body. Have you ever had something happen where you have a little bit of a sore throat and it never turns into something? And you're like, well, that was kind of strange. I felt like I was going to get sick, but it never actually manifested or turned into anything big. Same thing with aches and pains. Have you ever felt something that felt maybe a little worrisome and then it's just gone and you can't really explain it? So trust that your body is always doing this in the background. It's really powerful. The path of the healer is one in which we pause to ask why, we create awareness, and we are constantly being led back to our path of truth. This is really important because now with these foundations, wherever you go from here, you have this foundation. So this becomes a lifestyle where as we start to create awareness as our default, the light will get brighter and brighter and we'll always be led back to the path of truth. We'll see that it is indeed a choice. And like we talked about, I believe in part 2, is that we move then from this passive victimhood of life happening to us to constantly being in flow of the knowing that life is happening for us. Okay, you are the medicine. If you take nothing away from this course but this one slide, then we have won. This is another quote from Dr. Paul Wendow. The power to cure disease lies not in the hand of the doctor or specialist, but within the body itself. So again, you are a self-healing being. You are the medicine. The healer is and has been and always will be within you. So although doctors, specialists, conventional medicine, it's life-saving. Let's be real. There are many amazing utilizations of modern medicine. But it is a huge mistake to put your healing in the hand of a doctor or specialist. The power to cure disease lies not in the hand of the doctor or specialist, but within the body itself. Be the medicine. You now have the tools to ignite the healer within. It's your job to feed that fire and to keep it lit through access to your inner wisdom, awareness, and trust in the process. Because remember, we can shift fear into trust, into empowerment and sovereignty when we ask why, when we start to deeply understand what's happening, when we tap into that inner wisdom and intelligence that is within each and every one of us. So continue to ignite this fire. This is just a starting place. You now have the foundations, you have the tools. And so follow this path. Maybe you go back through the recordings, you will have access to them. Maybe you reach out for additional support to guide yourself or to have support guiding deeper into the psyche, into the conditions, into releasing anything that we might continue to carry with us that might not be serving. And in this process, right? Just by taking this course, just by thinking about the prompts, just by engaging in this. With a new sense of awareness, all of this will be revealed, and you'll know which path to take. And if not, you will have lights guiding you. Okay, this wraps up our part 3 or day 3. I'd love to stay connected, so please don't hesitate to reach out. I've put my email address and website on this slide, and you'll be able to find it in other places. But I would honestly love to connect and support you in any way I can. So check out the website, and on my website, you'll find a booking link. I do offer free discovery calls, so that would be a great way to connect and to decide if you would like to continue working with me in some capacity. On another note, we live in a time where I believe this work is needed more now than ever. And if just one person, one individual shifts their perspective to raise their own consciousness and vibration, this is felt among the collective. So please don't forget that just by doing your inner work, you can and will make a difference on such a grander scale. I would love for you to share this course with anyone you believe it may resonate with. My hope is that we can collectively start to trust in ourselves, our bodies, and to live with more ease in this, we can call it crazy, toxic, whatever you'd like to call this world, but we really can move into a place of sovereignty, of peace, and of magnetizing the life we desire. So I wish you well, and thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you soon.